Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our friends at Operation Smile. We're raising vital funds and awareness for the work Operation Smile does to deliver surgery to children with cleft lip and palate around the world. Find out more at emearecruitment.eu/operation-smile. In this episode, we're joined by Mailu Mizumoto, CEO and General Manager at eBay Payments in Singapore. She discusses moving from her background in compliance to the front line of the organisation.
So hello everybody, welcome to the next edition of the EMEA Recruitment podcast in partnership with our good friends over at Operation Smile. As my colleague mentioned, we're delighted to welcome Mailu to the podcast today. So hopefully Mailu, you can hear me okay and you're online?
Yeah, I'm here. Can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Perfect. So I know we've got a good list of questions to go through that partly have been sent through from our network and some from my colleagues here at EMEA as well. But before we go into these questions, I guess we can't avoid the obvious question about the whole COVID situation and how life has been for you over the last 12 to 16 months. So rather than maybe starting it on a negative, I maybe would ask you what you've learned really, I guess, over the last 12 to 16 months, and if there's any positives you can take from your experiences over this time, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, COVID has been quite a blessing. We have been working from home, and that have given me plenty of flexibility to spend more time with my kids and my family. And it has been really good. I mean, I think it does has, as everything in life, it has the positives and the negatives. I think I see more positive than negative on COVID. I'm sure some people will see the other way around, but for us here has been really good. In particular, Singapore, where I'm based, the government has done an amazing job, and kids are back in school since last year, and work is as normal as it can be. And same, the lifestyle and everything is as normal as it can be. Everybody's still wearing masks, everything is still on social distancing, but we shouldn't complain.
Mm-hmm. No, that's good. It's good to hear. And I think you mentioned there your positive outlook on this and the way you've looked at things. And I guess one of the other things to mention there is that, I mean, you're one of the people that have gone through a job change over this period of time, which I know has been, I know a number of people who've done this, and they've said, you know, both from a personal point of view and from a company point of view, it's been more challenging. But how did you find that in terms of the starting a new role at a great business at the height of the COVID situation, really?
I mean, it has been very interesting. I mean, I started as, as the CEO and general manager for eBay here in Singapore for the payments business that we are putting together. And I started right in the middle of a lockdown. The interview process started on the lockdown, and I think 90% of the people I've been working with, or maybe even more than that, I only met through Zoom and conference calls or Zoom meetings, pretty much. I mean, only actually the team in Singapore I have met in person, but this is because we are going to the office like once or twice a week. So, I mean, the whole setting up the computer and organizing everything, and the networking styles also have changed tremendously in comparison to what it used to be before, where people would just meet for coffee downstairs and catch up here or there on a restaurant, or even an in-person meeting. So I think we definitely had to learn how to manage the COVID situation, but also learn to interact with people and connect with people on a different way.
I know you mentioned the role that you've joined as the CEO and general manager for eBay in Singapore. You've been there for 12 months now. I think it's pretty much your year anniversary around this time as well. So I guess one of the questions I like to ask people is, what does it feel like to be the CEO of of eBay, because it's a great company, it's a great role. You've had a number of great experiences through your career with companies like GE, for example. But what does it feel like to you now to be in this great position of CEO, general manager at eBay in Singapore?
It feels, I mean, short answer, it feels great. I think it feels really great. As I come from a background of compliance, legal, and controls. I'm a lawyer by training. I did study business, but I have always worked in financial institutions on the compliance and the control side. And for the first time, I'm dealing directly on the front line and dealing with customers and thinking about the business as a whole, not only just one segment of it. And I think it managed to also give me perspective of the compliance group and how the compliance group works and how controls groups they work. It's almost like being the other side of the fence and looking from a completely different angle, which I thought was, in terms of experience, I wish I had done it earlier. I wish I have moved from one side of the role to a completely different angle of that, to see how you see and perceive that role that you were doing before. And I think, at least from my end, at least if I were to go back one day into a compliance or a controls role, I probably would do a lot of things differently. Not a lot, but I probably would do a couple of things differently. And I have a better perspective of what a business person would expect and want from your compliance officer. So it's been really great. I mean, having a whole perspective of the business and managing a whole entire business is also really interesting. It has been a steep learning journey for me, and with great challenges in all aspects. Of course, my compliance side, or my compliance side of the head, still plays a big role in it, as we are going through. Of course, it's a regulated entity, and there is a lot of implications with laws and requirements here in Singapore. So all that definitely helps me. But it has opened up a whole new, different perspective of how the business runs, of all different needs, and from a leadership perspective to execution and everything else.
I mean, it's really interesting to hear, because obviously you mentioned just there, you have the legal background and you moved into the compliance focus side of things, and you've done this through working with some of the world's best companies. We mentioned GE and eBay, but there's American Express as well, Merrill Lynch and HSBC. So some really top level companies throughout your career in different locations. Obviously Brazil starting off there, and now a number of years in Singapore. So something that I always find interesting is to ask you, is that almost what you planned? When you were starting your career, did you have this ambition for your career to go this way, or is it something that did you have a chance meeting or chance situation that took your career in this direction, do you think?
I think if I had planned, it would not come up this way. But to answer your question, absolutely not. I mean, this was not planned whatsoever. When I was graduating my business school, or even when I was graduating in law, it never occurred to me that I would be one day living in Singapore with an Australian husband, with kids that were born here, and have lived in, I don't know, 6 or 7 different countries. It was absolutely not planned. I mean, I think a lot of things in life, I mean, we think we are planning and we think we are in control, but we actually not. And I do believe things, they happen around you and your life for a reason. And I think we need to do is actually to embrace it and to, like you said, look at the positive side of everything. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, now it sounds really nice and interesting, the fact that I started in Brazil, moved from Brazil to New York to Tokyo, Tokyo to Bangkok, Singapore, spent time in Portugal, in Europe as well. I mean, it sounds really nice, but when you're going through it, sometimes it's really, really tough as well, because you're away from family, you're away from friends, you're away from everything. Work not necessarily is where you find a lot of support in these situations. So yeah, you absolutely don't plan. But I think what is important is for people to, and what I really learned through that journey is to always embrace it and always take the best out of it, and embrace it with an open heart. When I say embrace, it's just not just work it on your day-to-day job. No, embrace the whole thing. I mean, embrace the whole situation, embrace everything that comes in, the goods and the bads with it. And I think with that, the next step would be probably slightly easier, or at least you'll be stronger than you were before. And there is no downside to it. There is no regrets. There is no downsides to it.
Oh, again, it comes back a bit to your answer to the first question, really. There's a positive mindset that's running in the background here all the time, and then seeing embracing the challenges as they come along. Almost, I think you mentioned yourself there as well, accepting that there's certain things you can control, but not to worry about the things that you can't control, and really enjoy the journey as it's taking place. But I think behind everything as well, something that I think often gets overlooked, I think, where especially with the younger generation coming into the workforce now, is that there's a lot of hard work that goes on in the background, and that's one of the things that that I think you've obviously had the mindset for and the right approach to, but the hard work part of it and the sacrifices you've made to get to where you are, clearly a big part of that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the younger generation has the blessing of having so much information and technology in comparison to what I had before when I started this. I mean, it is just amazing. I mean, even in terms of communications and all that, when I started, I could not just pick up the phone and WhatsApp my mom on the phone and talk to her. I mean, there was, of course, technology available, but I think today is so much easier. I mean, it's absolutely incredible, the opportunities that they have, and also the world is so diverse and is so globalized, and I know there is a lot of noise around diversity, and there's a lot of noise around discrimination as well, but I think this is a reflection of what's happening around the whole entire world. I mean, there is more people from different ethnicities in different places. And I think even though you might be in a completely strange country to yourself, you will still be able to find probably people that are from a similar background to you. And in the past, that was not the case, or was much harder to find. So I think the new generation, I think they have a great opportunity in front of them. I mean, I talk to my kids. I mean, my kids, they're learning 3-4 different languages now. And no, three languages actually. No, 4, because you count English also as one of them. And I mean, I just cannot imagine what I can do with it. I barely learned English at school, and I had Portuguese as well, but that was it. You look at the kids nowadays, at a minimum, they are having 2 languages. At an absolutely minimum, they have 2 to 3 languages, actually. And they have traveled all around the world already at a very early age. So I think it's just, what the next generation can do will be so much more than what my generation has done. I mean, it's just a huge, incredible potential in there.
Hi everybody, it's Paul Thomas here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that helped me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value. And from personal experience, I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey, and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 182 francs for Operation Smile to provide a child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio, or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
No, it's true. And I think obviously while we're on the subject of talking about your life and career and the way you approach situations, I was wondering, is there a decision that you've made that you feel has changed your entire life? If there was one decision that you could pinpoint that you think this was a big game changer for me in life, is there anything that you really think stands out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell people, you want to change your life, you have kids. That would change your life.
This is very true.
I mean, but no, so I should, yes, I mean, my kids definitely have been a big game changer for me. But also when I decided to leave Brazil, I was quite young, and it was not something that I was thinking too much, and the pros and the cons, and I think about it. It was just like my boss called me and said, "Do you want to come to New York and work for me at headquarters?" I didn't even ask like anyone in my family. I answered immediately. I said, "Yes, absolutely, I'm coming. When do you need me there?" And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I mean, it was the most incredible thing. It opened the doors of the world for me. It's like it opened every single opportunity. So I think that was one, and the other one was having kids. Also, having kids, it's definitely changed a lot of things in my life, and I think that was very important. I mean, it opened up a whole new world for me. Like it's like I only knew the corporate world and the single life kind of world where you just have everything. I mean, because you're working, you can do anything anytime you want, except that sometimes you have to. Sometimes, a lot of times, you're working and you're in the office and calls. But besides that, I mean, your personal life is fully dedicated to what you want to do. All of a sudden, you learn that might not be the case once you have kids. A whole new world opens up with, which is incredible. I mean, I would strongly advise people to see that world, because it's just incredible. I mean, it's really, really, I think living life without it, or without having kids around you, it's not necessarily like having kids. I mean, some people just simply they live through kids' eyes and kids' life by like nieces and nephews and all of that. And I think that really works. But it does open a whole new world for you. And I think any decision that you're making, that it's something that could potentially slightly change what you're doing before, I would say you should really consider taking it. Just because you never know what is in the other side.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, no, so that, now obviously you mentioned the children and how much of a life-changing decision it is to have children, and I think obviously it aligns quite well with some of the other things we're talking about as well, because I think it does have an impact in terms of your time management and control of the day, and how you plan and focus and prioritize. So I thought a good question to ask you was how you tend to plan and focus for your typical working day. So is there a typical way that you tend to plan ahead for each day that you have?
There is the basic planning. I mean, you try to plan, but not necessarily things they go on schedule, on track the way you want. I mean, see, with COVID, it made a huge difference. I worked with kids before COVID and after COVID. Before COVID was much harder. With COVID, with the flexibility that companies are giving to you, it makes life much easier, because also you're able to spend more time with them. So there is less, I mean, there is still the need from the kids to see you and to come. I mean, sometimes I'm in conference calls, they come in and they start screaming and saying, oh, I lost a tooth. Like the other day I was in a huge conference call and my daughter lost her first tooth, and the whole end up knowing about it because I had a lot of people on the call. But I think one of the things that I would say, I mean, to go back to your question, we try, I mean, there is the basic planning, like pickups, drop-offs, the whatever school events that are happening, and that's on my calendar, is a hard block on that. But the rest of the day is pretty much dedicated to the calls and the meetings that we will do. But I think, yeah, I mean, I try not to do a very strict schedule, just simply because you never know what will happen during the day. You give yourself a bit of flexibility on your schedule to allow you some time to check on what they're doing, how they're doing, but also to allow you to have some space for yourself. I think that's very important. I mean, with kids, what I really learn is about balance. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like in theory, it should make your life go completely crazy. But I remember when I was pregnant of my first one, a very senior person at Amex told me, oh, that's very good, you're pregnant. It's like, it's going to give you perspective in life. And when she said that, I really didn't understand. I said, what do you mean perspective in life? I do have perspective of life. I mean, what she was talking about, right? And after a while, of course, I had my kids, and after a while, I said, I completely get it, what she said. I mean, it definitely give you perspective of life. It gives you balance as well. All of a sudden, you're not just a working machine, 24 hours available anytime from whenever the company needs you, and you start looking at things differently. And I think a more balanced life makes you also a better leader. It gives you perspective at work as well. Is able to give you a more balanced approach towards problems and issues that are happening in the company.
Mm-hmm. And I think the another question I had for you was moving towards your job and the compliance side of things, because it's quite interesting, because certainly from an outsider's point of view, I would look at compliance alongside things such as risk and control and so on, and so your role in that area of compliance is bringing control and helping to manage areas of risk. Whereas obviously in your let's say personal life, the way you manage yourself and your career has been more to embrace situations. So it is quite interesting to see the slightly different approaches in terms of what you do as a, let's say, as a job, but actually how you approach things from a personal point of view in their career. But I was wondering, actually, because the compliance is a huge area really for yourself, but also for the industry you're in and for Singapore right now. I was just wondering what you feel are the most common issues facing compliance in the industry right now.
So I think, I mean, compliance has grown so much. I have seen compliance from the very, very early stages when regulators would be issuing the first internal controls laws or requirements, and people at banks, I mean, at the time I was working at JP Morgan, they would just talk about integrity as part of your culture, and it was a training once a year. that people will sit down for 45 minutes and the general counsel will talk a bit about the integrity and how it was important for the culture of the organization, and people are supposed to do the right things by the rule and so on and so forth. And we move for that 45 minutes once a year training kind of thing. And this was JP Morgan with a trading desk and with the treasury and like private banking as well at the same time. So that was what was required. And he moved from that to hours and hours and hours of training, and so specialized, and the amount of resources that would be sitting in the compliance group is just incredible, right? So it really evolved significantly and very, very fast. But it's interesting how with the new regulations and the new requirements, the risks have also evolved and increased for corporations. I mean, it's much more difficult for you to be compliant today as when, like, probably 20, 25, 30 years ago, when banks had to be compliant. I mean, there was much less requirements. And I think in terms of the highest risk, I mean, it depends on the organization and the types of products that you're sitting on, right? Like, so like when I was working on credit cards, and if you look at for financial institutions, I mean, the biggest risks are still sitting on anti-money laundering, privacy, information security. And I know that cybersecurity now is becoming more and more of an issue. I mean, if you change the industry, you still will see some overlap. So they would have, for example, privacy issues and concerns on the pharmacy industries, but they would not have as much of an AML concern. So I think it changes. I mean, it changes on the industry, it changes based on the type of company organization you're working with. It changes based on the products that you have in your portfolio. But I think in general, across all industry, the level of risk and the level of commitment in terms of compliance has escalated significantly. I mean, it's just incredible. I have been on the bank industry and for quite a number of years, and it's just incredible how much it evolved in a very short period of time.
And I guess this comes back also to something you mentioned earlier, that you've been constantly learning yourself through your career, and being in a discipline like compliance, where you mentioned that the level of detail has just increased dramatically over the recent years. For you personally, I guess that means you've got to be constantly on your game and learning about the new the rules, regulations, and knowing all of the various impacts they're gonna have. So it means you're constantly learning about new things as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the basics of I think life for me. Like, I'm a person that really enjoys the learning process of anything you do. I think human beings in general, if they are interested in something, they will always learn about the subject, and they will evolve and evolve and evolve on their learning and also on their understanding and the knowledge they have. And I think with compliance, because it has, I mean, so many new regulations have come up, and companies have to change a lot throughout the past couple of years, the learning has been incredible. And it doesn't stop. I mean, it absolutely doesn't stop. I mean, if you look and try to track the number of new regulations that are being issued, I mean, it's just incredible. But a lot of times the regulators are reacting to the environment we operate, right? So all of a sudden you have cryptocurrencies and you have blockchain, and this did not exist if you look, I don't know, 10, 15 years from now, and regulators are not even thinking about it. So now you have to have new regulations, new laws about the subject because it's not regulated. And actually, it opens up a space and opportunity for corporations to operate in that area, in that segment. But soon the regulator catches up, and then new laws comes in, and then new controls, new process have to be in place by companies. And it's an evolving process. I mean, it's the constant non-stop evolving process, and which makes it so interesting, which makes it just an amazing environment for you to be working on. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible.
And you mentioned the constantly evolving area of compliance, and I think something that is going to have a bigger impact on this area in the future, in addition to all the things you mentioned, is the impact of BI and data. I mean, clearly, this isn't just going to be on compliance, this is going to be on all areas of business and our personal lives. I mean, how do you feel that the BI and data and the impacts it's going to have, how do you think it will affect compliance in the future?
I think it would certainly have a big impact. I mean, I think compliance is permeating the business in so many ways, shapes and forms in all aspects, right? I mean, today, and I do say people have to be crazy not to go compliance, not to go, people need to be careful not to go compliance crazy. So sometimes, like I have situations where you are as a customer of a company or a product, and you're talking to people that are providing you the services, and all of a sudden what they're saying doesn't make sense, or the process or the procedure does not make sense whatsoever, right? And then you ask them why you're doing this, why we need to do this, why is that needed, right? And they say, oh, because of compliance, and everything is always because of compliance. And I always say, like, people have to be careful about that, because they're in particular compliance professionals. They need to be very aware of the power they hold in their hands, and that they can really make disruption to business. As of today, I mean, you see that sometimes you are going through a process within a financial institutions, and you ask yourself, I mean, honestly, do we need all of that? For what purpose? For what are you doing with that information? What exactly is that going to? Or are you just checking the boxes for the sake of checking the box? And I think that's something very important for compliance professionals to think about. And to your question, as the regulation evolves to cover BI and other areas as well, like, you have to really consider how would that change your product? How that will change your organization, and how can compliance be supportive of that? How can it make it an advantage to your business and to your operations more than anything else, or instead of being just a burden to the company you're working for?
And I think it's very good point to say, because obviously within that, you mentioned about working with people and building relationships with people, and helping other people to learn around you as well, and highlighting the key areas of focus for the compliance, and making sure that they are on board with what they're doing, you know. So it is a very people focused role, as well as being a highly technical position as well, and clearly, given the nature of EMEA recruitment, I don't think we can have the podcast without asking you about people, really. I mean, I think, you know, because of the complexity of the compliance discipline and everything that is involved, I mean, when you are recruiting people to join you, I mean, how do you ensure that you're focused on quality people and have a really strong, efficient and effective recruitment process to get these quality people in?
Oh, that is a tough question. That's a question I should be asking. That is something I should be asking you. I mean, I rely on very good recruiters. That would be my answer. They will do the job, that to make sure that I'm not interviewing people that are worth interviewing it. But I mean, once you have passed through the basics, right? Like, you do the background checking, you look at the person's, like, I don't know, where they work, how they work, and you did all the due diligence around the person. I mean, it could go wrong, right? I mean, how many cases? I mean, you have a perfect candidate, and for whatever reason, it doesn't work. It doesn't match. I mean, it doesn't. They just, it's like a marriage, right? It simply doesn't work, and doesn't go on. It doesn't move forward, and that's really hard, because, I mean, you probably know better than me that organizations and corporations, they have personalities. They have culture. They have a culture. They have their own way of doing business. And I can tell you, working for so many different ones, I really know that they are different. They are really, it's the way you work in one organization can change and will change to the way you work with another organization. And with time also, I mean, time changed the way that organizations, they operate, and the way people interact in general. So I think, I mean, if you ask me today, I mean, and I'm interviewing candidates for a fintech organization, a company like eBay, you have to look for the right profile. Which is a profile that is different to a profile of a person joining a big financial institution that is extremely regulated, and it has a lot of different committees operating and happening here and there. Like the way they operate is very different to the way a fintech organization work or a startup will work. So I think my advice would be, number one, is like look at the company or the corporation you're working with, and what is the profile of people that fits and suiting to that. And after you identify the ones that are suitable to the profile of the organization, then I would probably go into the personality. The personality of the candidate is extremely important. And I think all organizations will have in common, everybody's looking for somebody that is passionate, everybody's looking for somebody that is technically very good on what they do. And also, by the way, the person is extremely good in communications, in leadership, and I mean, he has all these boxes to be ticked, right? And I always say to people, I said, I mean, ticking all the boxes is really, really hard. I mean, very rarely find, I don't think I ever found a candidate, and I don't think I also suiting to a person who ticks every single box when you are doing an interview. And I think you have to, in the end, I mean, look at the personality of the person and see if the person would be able to not only survive, but strive in the job and the role that you're hiring for. And this is just not the technical skills. The technical skills is one part of it. The communication skills is another part. The leadership is another small part of it. But I think it's more on the personality. Like, does this person has the right profile, the right personality for the role? I mean, would this person suit it properly? Or would him or her just simply, in the face of an issue or problem, will walk away, or would just really fall apart because it's not going to be able to find its way around, or it's not going to be able to change itself or herself for meeting the needs of the role, what the role requires. So, I mean, it's really hard, right? Like, it's really, really difficult. I mean, you probably would know better than me how hard it is to find a suitable candidate for the roles that will be open and available in the market.
No, I mean, I think everything you said there, I agree with, and actually something you mentioned earlier on in the conversation was really important as well. It is that if people are really interested and excited about either a role or a company or working for the person that they're sitting opposite, and that's half the battle, really. I think if you manage to get that match between either the company, the role, or the individual and the future manager, then they're going to enjoy the role, and they're going to give more to it. They're going to be happy to learn more and work harder and so on to make it successful. I think that's that for me over the years seems to be the biggest thing, because we've seen a number of times where we presented shortlists, and it's very often actually that the person that actually ends up getting the job is not necessarily the one who looks best on paper. It's just the one who is either the cultural fit or has got that real drive and enjoyment of that specific role or company or discipline. And I think every company is different. I mean, we've obviously over the years we've done a lot of work for eBay. I've also done a lot of work for GE, your other former company, and it's these company cultures are, they are very different. The people, there are some similarities, but people who thrive at GE don't necessarily thrive at Eagle, vice versa. So that's a big, big
I mean,
part.
it is incredible. I think what you said is so right. Like somebody that does well at GE or does well at, I don't know, HSBC, JP Morgan might not do well in another organization that is even in the same industry. But I think in the end, it boils down to the personality. Like, do you have the determination? How much do you want? How much do you want it to succeed on that? And do you have determination for that? Or you simply, you know what, like, I'll look for something else. I can find another job and move on and do another thing. And I think I think in the past, like previous my dad's generation, for example, they would get into one company and that is the company for the rest of their lives, right? you see, I know so many of my dad's friends, and they are just being in the same organization for a long time. While as the generations they become younger and younger, you see a different trend. People will just simply move jobs much more often than previous generations. And I think there is two things to it. I think there's two interesting aspects to it. One is the fact that this new generation, the newer generations, they will not keep up with nonsense. I mean, which I think is great. I'm not happy here. I don't like it. I will move on and I'll find myself something else. And it's not only another company. Sometimes it could be even a completely different role, a completely different position. It is a change of not only organizations, but it is a change sometimes even of a profession, which I think is really interesting how they do that. I have seen it, and they can successfully do that. And the only reason they successfully do that, in my opinion, is because when they're into it and they're really passionate about it, they will make it happen. They will learn, they will put the effort, they will do, and they have so much information available today, right? They will learn, they will get into it, and off they go, and they are still extremely successful in it, which I think is really good. While in the past, the old generations will have, okay, I learned this skill, and this is the skill set I learned in school, and I cannot learn another one, or I don't want to, I don't know, not that I don't want, but I can't see like where information is easily available for me. So therefore, they just persist and just to stay on that. And I always tell people, the truth is always in the middle. I mean, whatever is the discussion, I mean, always usually the middle is where you are. And I think it is, in this case, is also is the same answer that I'll give. I mean, the bus is in the middle. It's not for you to move jobs every year or every couple of years, maybe 1 or 2 years, but it's really to stay and try to learn a bit further and understand a bit more, try to persevere a bit more. And I think the balance is a good place to be like. So don't stay for the rest of your life in the same job, because I don't think of that, mainly if it's not making you happy. But just don't jump over and over and over one in another role or one in another company, because it might not be also the answer to find what you want.
Mm-hmm. No, it's quite good you mentioned that. Making sure you are happy with where you are, because that's almost where we started the conversation around how happy you are with where your life is at the moment, with your work, your location, your kids, and so it feels like we've closed the loop almost. On the podcast seamlessly there, and so I think it was awesome to speak to you today, Mailu. I really appreciate the conversation and the time you put into this. One of the things I was going to ask you, if any of the network want to reach out to you, what's the best way they can connect with you?
I think LinkedIn is the best way. I mean, it's like they can definitely send me a message on LinkedIn. Would love to catch up with them as well and to connect. That would be very good.
No, that's excellent. Well, what we'll do when we'll post the podcast, we'll make sure we put a link to your your page, so it's easy for people to connect with you as well. So that will help on that side. And yeah, once again, thank you very much for your time, Mailu, today. I really appreciate it. It was great to go through this with you. Really insightful conversation, which I know I've really enjoyed, but I know our network will take a lot from as well.
Thank you very much, Paul. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.